From deep beneath Dogwood Hall, it's DIY in the Dungeon with your host Dungeoneer, Matt from Dirty History and Hobbies.
I love that we live in an era when we can go online, find a game that interests us, and print out the rules, begin playing almost immediately. If we're feeling especially crafty or if we just want a physical copy of those rules, we can print them out and give them a 3-hole punch and put them in a binder. Or we could hand stitch them into folios and bind them into a hardbound book of our own. And if that game uses miniatures, and we happen to be lucky enough to have a 3D printer, we can print out those miniatures at home. Or we can take them to, for instance, a local library that has a 3D printer and print them out there. But what about games that come with cardboard counters? What should we do with those? Now, I have here some cardboard counters that I printed out for the game Mouse Ritter.
Now, the game of Mouse Ritter keeps track of your inventory spaces. And you fill those inventory spaces with these counters. Now, I can cut them out, they have dotted lines, but if I put them on my character sheet, they just blow away. I can put them on a standard sheet of cardboard that I've cut out of a shipping box. But that's extremely thick and more than what you're looking for to back counters for a character sheet. Or I could also affix them to a sheet of cardstock, but that's prohibitively thin. And it doesn't really accomplish much more than just cutting out the squares themselves. So what we're looking for is a piece of cardboard that's just thick enough to simulate the standard counters that come with a tactical war game. As a solution, I've begun saving my oatmeal containers. And you can unfold and take out the glue from the bottom. And then just a quick punch. Take out the base. And then we'll clip through and unfurl the cylinder. Now, that leaves it pretty round, but fortunately, I've taken the liberty of preparing a sheet so that we might begin crafting with them this afternoon. So I've had my cut cardboard cylinder under this sheet of wood with these weights on it. We'll take that. And line that up on our table. So my plan is to apply a coat of glue to the base. And then I'm going to spread that out. This little popsicle stick here. And I don't want it to be too thick because what it will do is wet that sheet of paper too much. And then undoubtedly the ink will start running. And instead of a nice printed counter, I'll just have a smudge. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply this glue. Make sure it's spread out across the edges. And then I'm going to give it a chance to get kind of tacky. Rather than apply the sheet of paper now while it's still pretty wet. And since this work table down here in my crafting dungeon is a little dirty, put this old sheet of board down and we'll take our first sheet. This should be good. And because we're letting this glue dry to a tacky state, I want to make sure that we get a good adhesion. And so the next thing I'm going to do is take a little glue stick and apply that to the back here. just to make sure the edges all lay flat. This particular glue stick goes on purple, but it dries to clear. Make sure we get a good coat on the edge. And then we'll fix our printed counter sheet. And move my cardboard here. Make sure it gets nicely adhered all the way across. And we'll let that dry. We've got a second sheet of counters here. So what we'll do is follow the same process for the other side here. Give it a good coating of glue. Then I'll take my spreading stick. Spread that out edge to edge. Make sure we get a nice even coat, not too much. We don't want it to stay wet for too long. Again, we want to let it dry to a tacky state before we attach the paper. I think the other advantage of putting this light coat of glue on the base is that the way these cylinders are formed include a diagonal cut for 2 layers of the cardboard, and so rather than see that come up, all right, so we'll let that dry for a little while. And now that we've had it drying for a couple minutes, I'm going to go ahead and do the same process on this second sheet, just like I did with the first. Nice coating of glue. And I think here I'm mostly worried about making sure that there's good glue on the edges, just in case I haven't spread it out evenly enough. We don't want the edges to come up before I've got the chance to trim off the counters, or worse yet, have the edges come up when I've already got the counters trimmed. So let's find this sheet here. Don't want to touch it with my wet hands. Go ahead and press it down with this dried cardboard. Looks like I've got a little discoloration there. My ink is blurring. Boop. Make sure it's out nice and even. And while I'm drying it, I'm going to put my sad iron back in the middle of the sheet just to keep it from bowing up. Okay, so we're all ready for our final stage, and that's to start cutting out the counters. I've decided to move out of the crafting dungeon and back up to the kitchen for this. But I'm taking an X-Acto knife here, and we'll just line up with our dotted lines. Whoop! If I can stay lined up with my dotted lines. There we go. I guess there's not too much narrative for this section of it. It's pretty obvious. You just go through the entire sheet, cut off the counters. Alright, so for the last part, I've cut out some of these counters here, and we can go ahead and start using them in our inventories. And so in Mouse Ritter, you keep, like, your weapon might be your two-handed weapon, and that would fill out 2 spots. Or you might use a single weapon, and then have a light armor, which includes a shield that would go on your on your off paw. And then if you get injured, or you're hungry, that starts to fill up your inventory spots. So as you have these conditions, there are fewer things that you can carry in your inventory. And just to give you an idea of what these counters then look like in terms of comparison to other counters, here's some 1.25 inch counters from Starfleet battles. So we have Klingon ships or Federation ships. You see they're very similar in size and thickness. And smaller counters might come in a cutout sheet like this. And of course that's closer to like a 1/2 inch. And that's it for this project. Thank you very much for watching.